Namaste. Welcome to the Shaman and the Mermaid. And here we are for June 20th through July 4th, the double eclipse, multiple retrograde astrology report. And if you happen to have a chance, you can subscribe to us below. It helps us out. Thank you. We will go through a lot of things this report. We were trying to distill it down to its essence as we usually do. And we decided that Mars is one of the key players to this, and emotions. So, would you like to share what we're mantraing?
Well, we chose it's intense times, as we all can feel and know. It's very clear there's a lot of civil unrest, and there is a lot of unemployment, a lot of insecurity around finances, a lot of uncertainty as to where the future is going. And there's a big player in all of this that Michael already mentioned. Mars is predominant through the rest of this 2020 year. His energy is going to have a strong influence on us. And if you know anything about the nature of Mars, if you go into mythology, for example, Aries, or Mars in the Greek and the Roman names, is the warrior god, the god of war, literally. And that is an energy, his energy is playing out strong. So because of that, we're already feeling it. We already feel the underpinnings of unrest and stirring of resentments and anger and attitude and agitations. Not that Mars can't have a positive side. For sure that warrior energy is our tenacity and our drive and our initiator or the aggressor to get something done. But if it's not used correctly, if it's out of balance, it can really be destructive. And so we wanted to kind of hone in on that potential for destruction and maybe steer away from the destruction. And we feel like with this new moon in Cancer, Cancer being the sensitive, emotional home sign, it's very vulnerable, and its emotions can kind of be, they run sensitive, that we could use that energy in a positive way to help some of that fiery Mars energy. So this theme, this round, is let compassion be your reaction. So easier said than done, I know. Our reactions are usually knee-jerk, and they don't always come from a place of compassion, but we thought if we plant that seed and if we put in some practices, some best practices to help us let that knee-jerk be one of compassion rather than anger or combustible energy that Mars usually has, we might have a better chance of navigating these summer months a little easier, because it can get pretty fiery, as you'll see as we unpack this astrology report. You want to go into the very first piece on the 30th, or on the 20th, sorry.
The Saturday, June 20th is the summer solstice, of course, depending upon where you are in the world. Here in Denver, it's actually happening right around midnight, and that's about the same time the total solar eclipse is happening. It's actually an annular solar eclipse. Annular means ring of fire around it, so that makes it even more dramatic. The sky will go black, and then there'll be a ring of fire around the moon if you're in Australia or Africa or Asia. And this is also when the sun moves into the sign of Cancer. There's a whole bunch of stuff. It's the longest day of the year in the northern hemisphere, and it's Mars and Neptune square this eclipse, or square the nodes of fate, the evolutionary axis, as we call it, or the axis of evolution. And there's so much packed into this first part that's happening this Saturday, June 20th / Sunday, June 21st. Solar eclipses are really intense energies. It's when the sun and the moon are traveling together, and the moon occults the sun. And this longest day of the year, we were trying to talk about that it's illuminating what was once in the darkness the most. And so this is a big illumination time of things that have been in the dark. And I think this is particularly accentuated by the Mars and Neptune squaring everything in the sign of Pisces. Pisces energy, when it's not balanced, can be the things that have been hidden, suppressed in society. Pisces represents the collective, and so this is things like racism and oppression and slavery and gender issues and money and politics and government and war. And I just read an article that said, I don't know how they calculated this, but in the 243 years that the United States has been a country, there's only been 17 years where we have not been at war. And our teacher, Saul David Ray, says in the 6,000 years of the past, there's been a war somewhere on the planet every single day. Well, as Katrina alluded to, Mars is the god of war. And he is right at that axis of evolution point between the past and the future where the eclipse is happening. And the longest day of the year, the solar eclipse, the blacking out, and then the illuminating, there's going to be so much more stuff revealed here for a while. And our other teacher, Kaipacha, calls Mars the can opener or the scalpel blade. And Mars is going into the collective unconscious, cutting it open, and the eclipse is pulling everything out and then bringing it into the collective to see. And right now it's like, oh my God, what's going on? Why is this all happening now? And to add to that, for the United States, coming up on July 4th, there's going to be another eclipse, and this is the United States' birthday, and there's an eclipse on the United States' birthday. And the United States is woven in with slavery and with oppression and with lots of issues around shadow and banking and government and wars.
So I have a feeling much will be revealed. And he mentioned Kaipacha, our astrology teacher, and he said in his last report, we're just at the beginning of the tunnel. We're just going into, like here in Denver, we have Eisenhower Tunnel going up 70, and it's that long tunnel, and you get into it, and it's just like forever, forever, forever. We're just at the beginning of the tunnel. We're just entering in. So this is going to be a, tunnels can be a little bit claustrophobic. You just want to see the light at the end so you know it's coming out, and you're underground. You have this, like, what if everything caved in on you? What if the car in the other lane doesn't see the lane? All this fear and trepidation often when you enter into the tunnel, and we're just heading into it. We thought COVID was it. That was laying the foundation for this whole 2020 platform that we are embarking on all the way up until winter solstice, clear at the end of the year. Are we going to see fire and intensity coming at us? So just brace yourselves for it. And we were watching an interview with Dalai Lama last night. I think it was either ABC or CBS did an interview with him, and ABC. And his whole premise was compassion. That the way to navigate through this tunnel, to use our analogy or Kaipacha's analogy, is by way of compassion. And we hear this repeatedly from wise elders before us. It was Martin Luther King Jr. who said, dark cannot drive out the darkness, only light can do that, and hate can't drive out the hate, only love can do that. Love, compassion, the same thing. If we really want to put weapons in our hands and ready ourselves for attack or combat, we need to load up the weapons to hold our love and compassion and kindness and tolerance and acceptance, and trying to be understanding and try to educate ourselves on the situations at hand, and not have that aggressive, defensive, typically Mars-like energy around some of these issues that are going to be coming up. And just slow and steady through the tunnel we go, moving forward. If you use that same analogy of getting in a tunnel, you can't stop the car because you're scared, because if you do, there's going to be a pile up. So you have to keep moving. You just have to trust and find the line and watch for the light and get out on the other side. And the guiding light in all of this is going to be that strong compassion. So, as Michael said, the big energy on the very first day of this report, June 20th, is going to be the eclipse, the solar eclipse on the solstice, the first day of summer. So happy birthday to all the Cancer people, all you sensitive, emotional, little crabby people. Not crabby in the grumpy sense of the word, although you can be, but crabs, because they're the ones, that's the icon of the sign of Cancer is the crab in its shell, because this is a home sign. It's about hunkering down and finding your nest and getting in your shell and feeling that sense of protection. Crabs like that protective energy of home. So typically in the summertime, we want to lose the shell. We want to get outside. We want to be about and exploring and playing in the ocean and the water and hiking in the mountains. And right now it might be wise, this is my personal opinion, but it might be wise to keep home close to you. Just, there's a lot of aggression right now, and feeding it by being out and about could add to the problem. Now, I'm not saying ignore. Please don't take it that way. Do not ignore what is happening, and help out in a active way through the ways that you feel most inclined, whether it's to go to the protests and march peacefully down the street, or to picket at the Capitol building against whatever it is that you're fighting for. Those are passive and positive and compassionate ways to support these causes. I'm not saying stay close to home and hide out, but right now, that sense of home is nurturing to us. And we need to feel grounded right now, because there's so much that's untethered, from finances to political to the civil unrest, that find nourishment in home. Find nourishment in the roots of your own nest right now as we move into this Cancer sign. And as Michael said, if you think about, just to remind yourself that eclipses happen on the nodes. And so when the sun and the moon are together, which they are on a new moon, and that's what this is, it's a new moon, solar eclipse, that means both the sun and the moon are going to be in that sign of Cancer. And they are squaring to Mars and Neptune. So remember last report, if you watched it, we said Mars and Neptune is kind of like a drowning soldier in the water. Doesn't feel comfortable just floating out there. And if they would stop fighting and just tread, they could relax into it. But the nature of that warrior is to combat and to fight it. And so he's already agitated in this Neptune energy of Pisces. Neptune, Pisces, same. And the moon, this eclipse, is squaring it. So there's a little extra agitation, as Michael alluded to. But just 2 days after that, because then Sunday is Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Happy Father's Day. And we celebrate you. Then on Monday, Neptune is going to go retrograde. So that now we will have, I think that makes the 7th planet for a very small window of time that are retrograde. Is that correct? 7?
I think 6.
We have Venus for one more day, retrograde. We have Mercury. We're in Mercury retrograde, don't forget. We have Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter retrograde. And then Neptune retrograde. So 6. And then soon, well, not really, not till September, Mars will be in a retrograde too.
Uranus in August.
And Uranus in August, so oh my goodness. But 6 retrograde planets is quite a bit. And remember, retrograde is to really kind of let yourself process, to slow your roll, to evaluate, reflect, refine. recalibrate. And so when it's Neptune going retrograde, Neptune is on the upshot, it's our spiritual aptitude. On the downside of Neptune, it's our delusion and our denial of things. And so with this retrograde happening on the 22nd, it allows us to take a good slow look, a good hard look, a good clear look at what we're denying or what we're delusional about, as well as where our spiritual aptitude could boost. I mean, this is a time for uplift of our spiritual practice. So we can refine our spiritual practice. We can really comb through what we're denying about our existence, denying our racism, denying our prejudices, denying our awareness of how much wrongdoing there really is going on. We don't want to know that. We don't want to know that there's corruption in a government. We don't want to know that we've been lied to and we've been practicing wrong ways, trusting systems that have been put in place. We don't want to know that. But that Neptune retrograde gives us an absolutely perfect opportunity to really research, another RE word, what is truly happening, what has been happening. I know for myself, I've been learning quite a bit about some of the pieces of Black history that were omitted from my history books growing up, and certainly I think even into my children's history books, because I did not know about Black Wall Street in 1921 in Oklahoma. I did not know that there was a massive genocide of a whole community of Black people, one of the most atrocious killings in our own country. That was not in my history books, and I am learning this now about it. And so that's part of that denial of things that our history books have painted a different picture. Then I can research and look. I'm really coming into awareness of Juneteenth, understanding that the real Emancipation Proclamation in its entirety was 2.5 years after it was written into law, because there were still slaves in Texas. And it took 2.5 more years before those slaves in Texas were really freed. And so this 19th of June, just right at this time that we're speaking of, is really a freedom day to be celebrating that emancipation, which really is somewhat of a denial and delusion in itself, because freed only if they weren't arrested for doing a crime. If they were caught as a criminal of any such sort, then they were allowed to be slaves again. And if you think about it, with all those slaves being freed, suddenly these plantations no longer have workhorses, no longer have free labor. So why not just find some criminal activity, put them in jail, and now we can have free slaves again? So this is a denial. This is a delusion that we have been living in as a people for hundreds of years. This is the kind of thing that Neptune retrograde is going to bring up for us to review and research. Then on the 24th,
a little bit of reprieve, and that's when Venus goes direct. She's been retrograde for about 40 days, and she does this thing where she was once the evening star, so all of you are probably looking to the west in the evenings of spring and winter and marveling at the brightest star slash planet.
So bright
in the sky, and then you saw that star slash planet every night started to get lower quicker about 60 days ago, and then poof, gone. Now she's in the underworld, and as of The 24th, she's on the other side of the sun. And so it takes a couple days for her to get far enough away from the sun to be seen, but now this is her heliacal rising period where Helios is the sun. She's rising before the sun. And for any planet, when they go into their heliacal rising phase, when they rise before the sun in the morning in the east, it's a whole new cycle of energy. And this has to do with a Venus star point. This is way more than we can talk about in this report. Maybe sometime we'll do an astrology workshop on Venus star points. Or if you want to check out an astrologer who really knows great information on this, it's Julia Simas, S-I-M-S, of the Central Intelligence Agency.
She's awesome, you guys. Check her out. She's down under.
So if you start waking up early in the next week or two, you'll see Venus rising in the east. Beautiful, very early before the sunrise. So Venus going direct in Gemini, it will probably be some different types of information coming out. And this is kind of a dual current. You have Neptune going retrograde, going back in, and I think Neptune retrograde will both bring things to the surface, and then that information coming to the surface will create a little more confusion, or a lot more confusion. Like, one of the biggest shocks to a human being is when you thought something was true and it turns out to be false and a lie.
We get hurt. We're hurt by that. We're hurt that we were trusting a person, an institution, an ideology, and then it's erroneous, it's wrong, and we were lied to. That's a stab in the heart.
And so I think Venus going direct and Neptune retrograde is going to be that current. Neptune's going to plow up some mistruths, bring them to the surface. It's going to be a shock to individuals and to the system. And then Venus is going to see the facts. When she's direct in Gemini, it's here's the truth. Have a look at it. Then documents, reports, and more information confirming it starts coming out. And then I think it'll be more like, wow, this really is true that this went down this way. And here's a whole bunch of proof and facts and information and documentation about it. And it will change the current of things, I think, permanently going forward. Venus will be the morning star now for 586 days. So for the next year and a half, you can catch her in the morning.
And she'll look magically bright.
Mm-hmm.
She's just gorgeous over there. And often Venus is referred to in a lot of Native American and Egyptian, Mayan traditions as morning star. That's her name oftentimes. Our theme is partially because of this Venus going direct. Let compassion be your reaction, because Venus is that, in mythology, if we go with Mars is the warrior, Venus is the lover. Venus is compassion. She is abundance, and she's beauty. She's Aphrodite, and she's love, 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 love. So when she moves direct, going forward with that strong stride into Gemini, the information zone, love and information, let compassion be your reaction. So when all this miseducation and untruths rise to the surface from all the retrogrades, but particularly that Neptune and Mercury retrograde, we're going to be knee-jerk, and we're going to want to punch something, and we're going to want to get that Mars energy that's so heavily laden throughout the summer for us. We're going to want to kick and fight and scream. And there's a place for aggression and assertiveness, but it doesn't have to be in a harmful way. And so as you ignite and as you surge with your feelings, because remember, the sun's in Cancer now, there's going to be lots of emotions coming to the surface. Let compassion be the seat of it. So my best practice takeaway for this report would be to do your daily meditations. Get up in the morning with Morningstar if you can, and just seat yourself in your heart. Let yourself feel the energy of compassion, center in it, like bathe in it. Imagine that you're washing compassion over your whole being. Just a few minutes in the morning, just to sit in it. Again, we'll reference Saul, our teacher, our yoga teacher, and he's constantly saying, we are wired for ecstasy. Our Anandamaya Kosha, our bliss body, is the deepest wrap around our soul self. We are born to be elated and happy and ecstatic. And so let yourself go into that bliss body and bathe in compassion, bathe in loving kindness. And then when you go out into the day and you're encountering some of these hard truths or these irrational behaviors, your first reaction isn't to throw a punch, but rather to do as the Dalai Lama says and practice that compassion and forgiveness and understanding. And let's educate people. Let's have conversations about how we can remove ourselves from the delusion and the denial that we've been in, educate ourselves into more loving beings, more serving and gracious and accepting beings. But it's not always our go-to response as humans. We've been conditioned to just knock somebody out instead. And I'm saying that that morning compassion meditation or heart meditation would serve greatly at this time, particularly throughout the whole rest of summer. Then we go into a little heavier energy. Venus going direct into Gemini gave us some direct flow, loving kindness, compassion into this phase of information. But then on the 26th and 27th.
And I'm going to combine a bunch of stuff into one comment from the 26th all the way to July 1st, because really I think they're giving a similar tone here, and it'll help us. Mars goes into Aries on June 27th. He's already been squaring the nodes and the eclipses the whole time, so we covered that energy. But Mars going into Aries is a introduction into his home sign of fire, of initiation, of willpower, and coming out of Pisces, where it was the drowning warrior, and now it's the warrior on land getting on the horse and pulling out the sword. This is further accentuated, and this is kind of a repeat of the Neptune-Venus energy. Lots of times astrology says, did you get it from this angle? Here's two different things giving you the same information from another angle. Jupiter will conjoin Pluto on Monday, June 29th, just a few days after that, so the following week. And to me, this is a repeat of all the energy. Jupiter conjoined Pluto is big truths revealed that have been in the underworld. Same thing as Neptune and Pisces retrograde. Things that were hidden suddenly revealed. Venus direct and facts coming out about this. And so this is like a double hit on that. And Jupiter and Pluto are the big dogs. And by the way, they're squaring Mars' sister, Eris. She's the feminine version of him. And she is hanging out, and she'll be squaring that same warrior energy. And other names for Eris is the goddess of discord, the goddess of forgetfulness, the goddess of manslaughter. And she is not happy about all this stuff coming up. And so it's not just the masculine that's pissed off, it's like the feminine as well is upset about this. And this gets to be very unstable. And the day after that, Sun squares Chiron, and then the day after that, Mercury squares Chiron. And so this Chiron is our collective wound. And where is Chiron? In Aries. Mars energy again. And Mercury is talking about it, and Sun is our personality. And so this whole time from June 26th to July 1st is more agitation of that warrior, warris, revealed truths, things that were hidden, big things coming out, and being agitated and explosive about it. But that's where you come back to our theme. Let compassion be your reaction. And by the way, on that July 1st day, Saturn, which has been retrograde, leaves the sign of Aquarius of future visionary thinking and goes back into Capricorn for the last time until another 29 years. So way into 2050 is when the next time we'll see Saturn come back into Capricorn. And so when a planet retrogrades back into a sign for that last little bit, this is critical. It's like something got forgotten, and we are going to have a look at it. And Capricorn energy and Saturn has to do with laws and karma and rules. And so this can be a really big karmic cleanup. And by the way, Saturn's heading closer to Pluto. And Jupiter, that truth revealed in the underworld. So, and again, as Katrina said, this is the start of the tunnel. This is only the beginning of going into that tunnel but it's like everything's going to be pulled up to the surface, and then these next couple months / years are going to be, what do we do about it?
One of those potential knee-jerk reaction is Sun conjoined Mercury on June 30th. I think you mentioned it, but I just want to go back to it, that when the Sun is our outward expression of self and Mercury is our communicator, and they are in that emotional Cancer watery sign, it could just be bleh! And so again, keep yourself centered in compassion and loving kindness. Just keep meditating on those words and concepts and energies. And I really wasn't kidding when I said do this with Morning Star, because oftentimes when you meditate on planets or with planets, the energy that they embody is accentuated through your meditation. So getting up at the crack of dawn when the sun's rising and letting yourself sit with Morning Star and bring in that Venus energy into your body would be a really helpful thing to do, because we certainly don't want to, especially with Mercury in retrograde too. So we know that sometimes our words can be misunderstood or misinterpreted during retrograde, and the Sun and Mercury in Cancer conjoin is a big one for that. So let compassion be your reaction as best you can. And then that takes us all the way up to our next report, which will be on the 4th of July, 5th of July, depending on your time zone, and that will be a Capricorn full moon. And we'll talk a little bit more about that Capricorn energy. But in the meantime, just keep moving forward through the tunnel. The light will be there at the end. Use compassion as your guide stone, and we wish you the best. Happy solstice. If you get this on the solstice day early enough and watch it, we are having our 10-year birthday party for Karma Yoga Center. If you're in Denver, we'll meet up at Ruby Hill Park. Up by the playground from 6 to 8. Michael's going to lead us in a little meditation to start off, and then it's bring your own picnic, and we'll hope to see you guys there and have a little birthday celebration. And also remember that our yoga center is open, so if you are in Denver, please come back in and take class. We'd love to see you. We've missed you. And don't forget to subscribe at the end here. That would be very helpful for us to be able to take things remotely. Right now we're having to stay here inside, and when we get enough subscriptions, then it allows us to go traveling and remote. We'd like to show you some parts of the world that we go to. All right, namaste.
Namaste.